After looking at the DC motor in the last video, we're going to move on to the servo. The servo is another way to generate rotational movement, but where the DC motor can continually rotate in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction, the servo is limited by the degrees of its rotation. Okay, so the servo that you have in your box, the HS485HB, is limited in its range of motion. We do have some servos called continuous rotation servos that we'll use in the future, but know that this has a limited range of motion. However, it has an accurate range of motion. Okay, so we can accurately tell the servo to move to a degree and actually have some nice accurate movement, which is important if we're trying to use this to either spin an axle, okay, of a small component, move the servo head on one of these adapters, or even attach it to some metal and have it move maybe an electronic component at the end, like a sensor, something that can take data into the system. Okay, so we're going to look at these really quickly and how to use it. First off, if your servo has a screw in here, this little black screw, find your 4-in-1 tool. Okay, find your 4-in-1 tool, adapt it to the larger size. Okay, oops, that's the wrong side. It's this one over here. Okay, so adapt it to the right side and make sure that it fits nice and snug. Okay, these black screws are very easy to strip, meaning that we lose the bit pattern on the top, and then they can get stuck in here, which means I have to bring them down to the shop and grind them out. Okay, so you're going to start by getting it in there. Get it started with your fingers, just enough so that it stays sort of in the screw, so that the screw stays in a little bit. Okay, and you're going to take your 4-in-1 screwdriver, place it in, and this is very important that you apply your force perpendicular. So perpendicular means to take your screwdriver, make sure it's 90 degrees with the front face of the servo. Okay, so 90 degrees. You do not want to drive the screw in on an angle. It will strip either the mounting or the screw itself. What I'm going to do is palm the 4-in-1 screwdriver in my palm, and that allows me to apply a nice consistent force while using my fingers to pivot the screw. I'm going to use my other hand to hold the servo firmly so that it's not wiggling around. And I'm going to drive the screw in nice and slow. Okay, slow and steady here. You do not want to break the servo or the screw. And then you just do the opposite. If you want to remove the screw, just don't palm it with a forward pressure. Okay, but nice and slow. You have to apply some pressure to make sure the screw bites, or you'll see, like I'm showing you here, that it will slip and jump. That slipping and jumping is what rounds out or strips the screw. Okay, so I'm going to back this screw off nice and slow. You're going to want to do this as well with a little bit of forward pressure, so going that way, but turning in a counterclockwise direction. Okay, again, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. I'm going to take that screw and we're going to put it in our box for later. Our first adapter we're going to look at here is an axle adapter. Okay, one end has a set screw, so we're going to back that set screw off. We're going to make sure we can look down the shaft or the inside diameter of this adapter and make sure there's no set screw or no protrusion. And then we're going to take this other side that is grooved, line it up with the grooves on the servo, and just simply push it on. This allows us to then take our axle, line up the flat side of the axle with the set screw, and use our Allen key to tighten it up. Now when the servo is given data to turn, the little servo head will turn the axle collar, or the adapter, which will then apply the motion to this axle, depending on what we have hooked up over here. Okay, and we'll look at different applications of this in future videos. So I'm just going to back that off really quick. Another servo head we have available to us, but we haven't really used very often, are these little plastic heads. They break a little easier. I tend not to use them when possible, but they again just snap on. Okay, and you can put screws through the ends to attach to something. Okay, you can also use this to maybe thread some fishing line through, and you can have a way to move the servo head back and forth and have the fishing line attached to something that needs sort of like a pivoting motion. Okay, again, this just pops off. And I pop things off by pulling straight up. Okay, the most useful one that we'll use, okay, we will use this axle adapter quite often, but more often than not, you're going to use this flat one. Again, it's going to have this head that has a groove, which will fit on, and it's going to have this flat surface with these 4 screw holes that match up to an extrusion. Okay, so right here I have a flat, but you can also do this on channels or other metals as well, available to us. And the important thing here is to look at it, get things lined up, and sort of attach everything together before you move on. And when you go to attach, I highly recommend you use the button screws, because when they go through, okay, so if I apply it underneath, they'll give you nice clearance up here. So we have that little bit of extra space for when it's pivoting so that nothing gets hooked. Okay, so you can put that on, and then the servo could rotate it left and right. Okay, so I'm going to just put that to the side. Something you're going to want to do in preparation for a future video encoding is find one of these things called a standoff. Okay, so it's the shortest standoff here, and you'll notice that I accidentally took the longest screw. And believe it or not, that's the screw I needed for the Omni wheel in a previous video. So I just found where it was missing. So I'm going to throw that back in the box and just take a regular button wheel screw, or button cap screw. I'm going to take this adapter and put the screw through on the bottom. I'm going to grab my handy Allen key, make sure it fits, and I'm going to screw on one of these standoffs, just like that. So that way when I attach it in a future video and I start rotating this, I can see the standoff move. It just helps you a little bit to visualize the actual movement, because if you just see the little black thing move, it's hard to visualize the rotation. So now I'm going to turn it slowly to the left, okay, and that's going to be the bottoming outside of that. And I'm going to slowly turn it to the right, and I'm going to see that it ends up here. So I started right over here, and the other side where it sort of bottoms out is right over here. If I apply just an axle, you can see it forms a straight line, or 180 degrees. So these servos, like I mentioned at the start of the video, when we would get to it, these are 180 degree servos. Okay, so I'm going to pop that off. You can leave this constructed in your box for a future video when we pop it on and actually code this servo. Thanks for watching.